Hey everybody, Stu Smith and Jeff Nichols here with another Tactical Fitness Report, and we are continuing on with our favorite books. And these are books that, we're trying to limit it to 5 each, which is really difficult. But I will say that I'm trying to make my decision be, these are books that impacted me in a way that changed the way I did things, changed the way I thought, maybe motivated me, whatever those little things were, the books that created, a response. So yeah,
You
that's
bet.
kind of I'm using the model for.
Yep.
So yeah.
You bet. You're gonna go since I started last
Okay.
time.
I'll
You
start
go
first.
first. How about
All right.
that?
So here's for me, this one was very impactful. And it's by Viktor Frankl.
Oh, yep.
Okay.
Catherine said you need to read this. It's on my desk.
Yeah.
Yep, that's on my list.
Man's Search for Meaning. And if you don't know who Viktor Frankl was, he survived being in the Holocaust, a Jewish man, in a concentration camp, right? And he found, I guess my favorite quote by him was, if you have a why, you can endure almost anyhow, something like that. I butcher it a little bit, but that's it. Anyway, I want to read just one little segment in here because he goes into these things about the essence of existence, the meaning of life, just everything. And this is a couple sentences here. I doubt whether a doctor can answer this question in general terms about the meaning of life. The meaning of life differs from man to man, from day to day, from hour to hour. What matters, therefore, is not the meaning of life in general, but rather the specific meaning of that person's life in a given moment, right? And it goes on, but, if you really think about that, things change. Our motivations change, our lives change, and you have to be really understanding of these changes as we age, whether it's training differently or it's different goals after you have a family, all these different things that he just really makes you dig into, when you read it, and also makes you say, damn, I don't have it bad at all. You learn a lot from his
Perspective.
misery. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And I like the synopsis of that for me was given, and that's the next book I'm reading. I'll be reading that halfway through book that I'll address here. Must be an incredible thing for a man to endure that and have empathy for the people that are confining him and understanding, hey, like the herd mentality of these soldiers, like I'm a prisoner, they're okay with it, this is war. Like, and be able to take that perspective as a prisoner in that regard and go, hey, I don't want to be here, but there is this sliver inside me that can understand why they're doing it.
Yeah.
And that's perspective, and that's very powerful. And so I'm very, very, very excited to start reading that book.
Yeah.
Yep. So, in the theme of, in the theme of war, I'm lumping these two books together because when you need to buy them both. So okay. I'm saying top 5, but there's 6 that I'm going to offer you: On Combat and On Killing.
Oh yeah.
Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. He is. I've been fortunate to hear him speak multiple times, and I can tell you he's the most impressive speaker I've ever heard in my entire life. And his impact on me, the first time I heard him is right before I deployed in my second deployment, and to this day, he has completely changed my life in that regard. Like the way I think about things, the way I approach things, the way I understand combat. And why we do what we do as a herd mentality or having empathy or whatever. Complete mind shift of a warrior, right? He won a Pulitzer for On Killing. That was his first book. And this basically, he was allowed, because he was a professor at the War College in Tampa, he was allowed to go into the archives of West Point and Naval Academy and start looking at, okay, well, why did soldiers do this and what are the stats? And then, and there's a lot of stat driven stuff in here. And that led him to this, to more of a modern type warrior that's a little more as a modern soldier, modern SWAT officer, modern whatever, it kind of it hits a lot closer because it speaks more towards stress inoculation and those sort of things that are so incredibly valuable. And it referenced some, well, at the time they were fairly new stuff. Some of the mass shootings in Columbine. He was one of the guys that was pulled in to there in Arkansas to console and understand, like, what is the psychological standpoint of these killers and why did they do it and what prompted them. And it really made me feel like more of a much more capable operator because it allowed me to emotionally understand the decisions I was making from a real, like, hey, I want to protect and serve my brothers and country. And it really helped me understand that.
Yeah, he's a psychologist, and, when you can take things from the psychological level and explain it the way he does to someone who has no understanding of psychology, it's a really good read, good book and education. And I love his analogy with the sheepdog.
Yep. You all are gonna hear so many things that he coined.
Yeah.
When you read, you go, oh, that's where the sheepdog. I'm telling you, you're gonna go, oh my God, this guy has been everywhere, and I didn't even know it.
Yeah, there have been so many memes made of him. So many memes being the sheepdog and the sheep and the wolf,
man. And he is compelling human being, and I can't encourage you guys enough to dig into it.
Yeah, you definitely got to read those. Those are good ones. All right, so my last book I ever read before I went to Buds was a book by Dick Couch. His first book that he came out with is a fiction book called SEAL Team 1, but it had about 6 chapters of what Buds was like for him. And that, back in early 90s, that's what you got. You find these little golden nuggets and you're like, okay, this is what I signed up for. Right. And you understood it. So let me just share my screen with you for this. And like I said, I had it in paperback. So this is SEAL Team 1. You can get it in Kindle, Dick Couch. And he has written so many books on special warfare. In fact, if you go to his, what do you call this? Wikipedia, right? Yeah. SEAL Team 1, Pressure Point. I haven't read many of his fictional ones, but his nonfiction, everybody knows these.
The Finishing School and the Warrior Elite are like staples.
Warrior Elite. I tell you what, I really liked Downrange, the Sheriff of Ramadi.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah, but we are referenced in that.
Oh, are you?
Was, yeah.
Okay. Yep. The Chosen Soldier, really good. You learn a lot about, what it takes to become a, Green Beret, Special Forces guy, and the making of the modern Ranger. I mean, he's gone everywhere and just like, just followed these folks, through their training and then through some operations and really dug deep into the journey. And he's a former SEAL too. In fact, I have a picture somewhere.
I think he's done such a good credit to explaining like the experience without divulging any sort of real information that could be harmful. And I think that's why he certainly is allowed to continue to do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, he's a Naval Academy grad, class of 67. Back then you could not go to Buds right out of graduation. You had to go be a surface officer first and then lateral transfer. In fact, the father of SEALs and EOD, Admiral Kaufman, Drager Kaufman, Drager.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Not Drager. Damn, why am I screwing up his name? So anyway,
so many names.
Yeah. He's the father of SEALs and EOD. He was the superintendent at the time. And when Dick Couch told him that he wanted to become a SEAL, he was like, we don't make SEALs here. You have to go to the fleet. And that's not what we trained you to be. And so there's a neat story in there in one of his books. I think it's the Sheriff of Ramadi. You see he goes back to when he was a SEAL a little bit when he first started and telling that story. But yeah, it's been a crazy journey how people have become SEALs. And back then he was just trying to get to UDT, right? Before, it was even, if SEALs were just starting.
Right.
So anyway, that's good. Anything, I'm just going to say this, anything by Dick Couch.
Yeah, it's a good read.
It's
a good read.
Yeah.
You bet.
Especially if you want a military Spec Ops level read, that is a good one.
Yeah. My next one is, again, my next four are really kind of come off. They're not really military oriented in that, like the context of it, but the next four books, certainly the next three books, I can say that they're in this top five for a reason. The emotional attachment to them because of what they've done for me as a person, like what, from a perspective standpoint, and I expect that to be very much the result from reading Frankl's book as well. This book is written by David Brooks, and it's called The Road to Character. This book right here was recommended to me by a friend in South Carolina, that he himself was a world-class athlete. That ego really was something of value to him. And when that began to fall apart because of injuries and his identity associated, his ego associated to like, hey, I am a Navy SEAL, and there's so many guys that don't have that title anymore, the ego has nothing to hold them up. And I'm using that as my personal example.
Sure.
As much as I want to give value to the community is what it is. I'm not a Navy SEAL. It was a title that I very much love and appreciate, but I needed to root something in me. And this book right here was something that allowed that the personal affirmation of being a Navy SEAL, those attributes that I possess were not because of the community. It was a place where I was able to place those attributes and let them grow. And I realized when I got out, me becoming a teacher is what we do. It just made sense to just continue to take that love and passion that I had in the community. I hadn't lost it.
Sure.
And so this book right here was really profound for me to realize that I am not my thoughts and I am not my title. And even as much as value that the community gave me with the title, right, and sort of my ego, it's something that really helped me understand that I'm not my thoughts. So it was a very profound book for me.
David Brooks, is that the guy who wrote that?
Correct. David Brooks.
The athlete?
No, also, I don't believe so. He could,
because David Brooks, I think I've read some of his, like he was.
It does not read in the backside. No. So his second book I have on my table. Same guy. The Second Mountain. I haven't read that yet, but that's literally sitting right there too.
Oh, okay.
Like I got a bunch of books in queue. It doesn't. Gotcha. I just kind of scanned through his biography in the back. I didn't see anything about athletics other than a lot of neuroscience and some things. So it seems like he's a neuroscientist of some sort or a psychologist.
Gotcha.
So he probably is attached to sport in so many ways, which is why a former athlete was like, hey, you should probably read this. Because that was the thing too, is he really recognized me struggling in my transition. Like I really struggled with the transition of identity when I got out. And this book was very helpful in that.
Yeah, it sucks. Transitioning sucks.
Anyone that tells you that transition is easy, because I used to say that, is a fool, is lying to themselves. It was excruciating to say that I was like, people like, well, what do you do? Like, well, I'm this. I'm like, yeah, but I used to do this. Like it was the only thing that I could it was crazy. Like it was very hard for me to realize that my title wasn't valuable.
Yeah. I tell you what, I mean, obviously the job was great, and working with people, at that caliber is incredible. You were never the smartest guy in the room and, or the toughest guy in the room. And that was always an honor to be in that group, and then when you left it, I also left my social group, my social group was gone. And there was some
transition.
It's
a big social trend. Like that aside, like forget the job.
Yeah.
Social transition was equally difficult, and that's what I really had to deal with. It was like, you go from college baseball player, have just instantly thrust into this fraternity of people. I didn't even make friends
Right.
as an
Yeah.
athlete, and then it's like, oh, you're a Navy SEAL. Oh, here is 3,000 of your brothers, whether you get along with them or not. You're like,
Right.
oh, here's your friends.
Yeah.
And you get out and you're like, where's my friends? You're like, holy crap. Oh God, I gotta figure this out because it's just eating me up. And this book was a really good, real valuable tool.
Yeah, I remember like finding like my first new set of friends afterwards, and then we'd set something up, and then no one would show, and I was like, "What the hell? What the hell is this?" It's like
garbage.
I'm like, "What the hell's going on here?"
Yeah.
And I remember going home and just being sad.
Yep, that's it. Yeah.
All right. So next one. All right. So here's one I read in the 90s. I was a lieutenant in the Navy. The guy who wrote it at the time was a commander, and he did it as a Navy postgraduate school thesis. And he came to teach us at the academy some of these things. You might know him. His name is William McRaven. Back then, he was a commander in the 90s, and he had written this book on Spec Ops. And it's not one of those books that's a big seller, because it is a study in all these former special operations, from the Entebbe raid, one of the first mini sub raids in World War II, U.S. Army raid on Vietnamese prisoner of war camp, all these great classic Spec Ops programs. Because you got to remember, in the 90s, we were studying Spec Ops missions. We weren't doing them, right?
Yeah.
There weren't a whole lot going on. I mean, maybe DevGru had a few over there, but they were kind of hit and miss, even for them.
For sure.
In the late 90s, it was nothing was going on. It's a different world before 9/11.
Yeah.
Let me just say that. And
it's kind of what's happening. Not that things are. The special operations community right now is like our generation of guys that were in sustained combat. That is now everyone's filtering through all like, hey, what are the lessons learned for the next generation? It's happening again.
Yes.
So and that is also why the military, the SEAL community in part is so good, because we do brief and debrief and rebrief, and like we don't allow the past mistakes to become future mistakes, because we deep dive like that.
Right. So yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
So here again, you'll see the theme on mine. Again, this one was to be honest with you, I feel a little bit sad because I don't know who recommended this, but whoever did, I really appreciate it, because it was a life-changing for me. Ego is the Enemy.
Okay.
The author, Ryan Holiday. It's a very short read. I think I read it in one or two sittings. And again, it's one of those things that to me, it's not advertised as a self-help book. I don't believe. It may or may not be. But I think that, and this is why I say this a lot, I say the most ego-driven population in the world is a tactical population, and you and I are in charge of telling them that are doing things wrong, right? Mm-hmm. So in terms of training and whatnot. So for me, understanding how grand my ego is and was relative to its conditioning, life conditioning of sport in the tactical population of go do it right, go do it right. And fortunately, I was blessed with athleticism and the ability to do these things. And it just made my ego so big and so heavy. And just to understand it, getting that perspective from someone that didn't feel it wasn't attacking my sense of self, but understanding why I am the way I am. And I think that's really valuable for anyone. And that book just changed my life after the fact, after service.
Nice. Okay. This one is for all of you guys who, may not like to read much at all. Right. And this is one that you just it's one of those real easy, you can go in, check it out, set it down, and you're done, right? And you go back in, check it out, and you're done. It's kind of like reading for the people with attention deficit disorder. Or if you're using the toilet, right? This is a great one to have in the bathroom.
Yes.
501 must-know speeches. You know, everything from the cover
FDR,
there. Yeah, everything. I mean, just
the only thing to fear is fear itself.
I mean,
during the Depression, yeah, I bet there's some epic ones in there.
Oh, there's crazy. I mean,
501 epic ones.
I mean, everyone from, I mean, Hitler's even in here.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so you learn about the mindset of, you know, Winston Churchill and Hitler and Neville Chamberlain, you know, World War II stuff. And then, you know, you also have some classics from Socrates, and, you know, it is
all good.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You just can't go. I probably touched this book more than any other book in my house.
Yeah.
You know, just because I haven't even finished reading it. You know, it's just one of those things that I go to, I take 5-10 minutes, read a couple, and move on. So, yeah.
Yeah. Kind of on that same sort of necessary to read, kind of like in this book in particular, I referenced a ton. Each chapter is kind of independent of each other, but it runs into a story. Like I said, I have read this book multiple times, and I've listened to it equally a number of times. It is 12 Roots for Life by Jordan Peterson.
Oh, yeah.
I've bought 158 of these and gifted 156 of them so far.
Oh, wow.
I think that for me, again, timing being what it was, and understanding a lot about choices, and then the common thread in good and bad in all of one's life is you're the common thread, and understanding that to me was extremely valuable. It made me a much better coach, much better person, much better father. And I continue to reference it as a reminder of like the type of person I want to be. And without, like, you know, there's a lot of things about, oh, is change going to make me less effective, less intelligent? Is it going to lobotomize me? Is it going to be, is being nice and compassionate going to make me less aggressive and as a fighter or a warrior? And the psychology, like as you mentioned with him, or with a good psychologist, some people can deliver it extremely well. And to me, his words and his ideas and the way he delivers has spoken to me about as good as anyone. This book right here, I would say, is one of the most important books I've ever read in my life up until recently, which is what I'll get to next, which is even really kind of an interesting thing. But I kind of consider a lot of these things one and the same. And it's for me, I have a real goal to be as good a person I can be. And this is very helpful in that.
Nice. Yeah. You know what? Watching him do interviews is like a little thing of magic, you know, because he is just so calm, you know, no matter who is interviewing. And half the time it's somebody who doesn't agree with what he's, you know, discussing, you know, and he just turns it upside down on them. But he does a masterful
It's
job.
exactly what Barack Obama said. You know, I rarely quote that person, I guess, because I don't know a lot of it. It's like, you don't have to, you know, you don't have to be disagreeable when you disagree.
Right.
And I thought that was like, oh, that's really profound too. It's like, okay, and it's one thing to say it, but start understanding how it is I approach that idea without blowing up on people or whatever it is. And that's Jordan Peterson exemplifies that very well.
I would agree. All right. So we've gotten pretty deep into some of these. I'm going to pull back a notch, and this is more of a how-to book that I really enjoy. It's a friend of mine who wrote this, Navy SEAL by the name of Don Mann. Mm-hmm. And he wrote this Navy SEAL survival handbook that, you know, at first I saw this, I was like, okay, what is this? And then I was going into it, and I learned so much about survival from this, because there were things that I didn't think about, like what if you have to survive in the Arctic, or what do you have to survive in the desert? What do you have to survive in the jungle? I mean, he breaks it down to
what if you're surviving COVID?
all over the world, right? No matter what situation it is, from being in a raft in the middle of the ocean, lost at sea, I mean, he just goes on, and
goes right next to best 501 speeches next to the toilet.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I'm like, what would I do in this situation?
It's like, why is Stu been in the bathroom for 45 minutes? Yeah.
No, it's just really
I'm working
good.
on survival.
Yeah, it's just really good. I mean, he's a tough dude, man. He was a SEAL Team 6 guy in the 80s.
Yeah, I think it's his brother I know real well.
Yeah, he was a warrant officer, corpsman, independent duty corpsman type guy in the Navy, and has gone on to do some crazy things post service, like adventure races, like 10-day,
same family.
Yeah.
His brother is hard as woodpecker lips too.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
So
really
tough.
good. He was such good. Yeah, and those things, that sort of information, those sort of characters, those sort of people just will transcend, and it's good information. Absolutely.
It is. Like I said, I grew up surviving in the woods, and hunting and fishing, and I knew how to make a fire, all these little things like that, being able to survive in those situations. But thinking I was a pretty good outdoors guy, but I tell you, I took it to a whole new level, reading his book. Yeah. So if you're one of those survivalist guys, or doomsday preppers, get yourself that one. It's a good book.
I have one that is the U.S. Army Special Forces manual for survival.
That's a classic.
I have the actual manual.
Yep.
I found it at a yard sale. It's
awesome.
Really cool to go through and go, I never thought about that. Like, it really is. I think that's just kind of one of those things that it's just general knowledge that is just always good to have. It's beyond general, but it's great knowledge to have for sure. Yeah. So this one, just off camera, I said to Stu, I said, if this book right here, I'm 106 pages in to 230. So I'm almost halfway through. If this book were to end right now, it would be the most impactful book I've ever read in my life, hands down. I know it's a bold statement, but I'm good to say that, outside of maybe the Bible, right? So it's an interesting thing because it kind of complements some of the things, the books I've shown before. It's interesting because I've never seen a book that sold more copies than this. It's over 5 million. This is a couple years old. Okay. The book is The Power of Now. Okay. And the author's name is pronounced Eckhart Tolle, or Tolle. I think it's Tolle. Okay. And what is it? It's the guide to spiritual enlightenment, right? That's it. So don't mistake the name. I guess it's like one of those things that there's going to be a lot of people that might read that and go, whoa, like my brain is not ready for that. And I could have not used this book as a reference, at risk of going, wow, this is like way outside of my realm of spirituality and beliefs and these sort of things. But this brought meditation and those sort of, again, using a buzzword of meditation. I don't like to use, it's not a buzzword to me necessarily because of the value, but some of the things he says and these things really resonate with me as who I am and where I come from. And I'm just excited to read more about it and these sort of things. But summary is that if you read it, be patient with it, because it's going to take a tremendous amount of intellectual space for you to focus. Like that's why that's the caveat to this. This is an extraordinarily deep emotional dive on, and you can't just read it. You can't just go through it. I'm going to have to read it and reread it and read it and reread it and highlight it. And it's just one of those things that there's always points that you stop and think, you go, oh my God, like, how does that impact me? And so for me, it's been just in the short time that I've been going through it, it's really valuable for me. So
Nice.
I'm excited to read more about it.
So who is Tole? Who is the author?
Wow. So he, his I guess it says a contemporary spiritual teacher. He's not aligned with religion. He's not, he in the I am not well versed in the meditation community. I know people that are impactful he is in that world of spiritual enlightenment. That is, his story is basically, he was a homeless man for in Vancouver, and life trauma, deep spiritual duress created this. Like for me, like I had a real problem with, like I said, separating my ego from who I am. And I've hit rock bottom. Like I really hit rock bottom, if some people know. So did he. And that break created that point where it's like, hey, I've got to make change. I have to, or this is going to kill me. And his path, it resembles like an emotion, what I experienced through these teachings, through my therapy, both my psychiatrist and my psychedelics and other sort of therapies I've been through. He just lays it out. So like, oh man, it's like the same thing that Colonel Dave Grossman laid out for combat trauma and inoculation. I go, that makes total sense. and so whether it's Jordan Peterson and Eckhart Tolle or C.S. Lewis, so impactful, because it made me realize that there are a lot of other people out there that experience these traumas, and it's not a how-to, it's an understanding of, okay, you're not crazy. Like this is the human condition.
That is a nice thing to figure out. That is a nice thing to figure out, that you're not.
Truly.
It really is. That there's not only a psychological reason, there's a physiological reason. Behind a lot of this, and the two are linked. Absolutely. That's good. I'm glad you like that. Let's see. One thing I like about that title, The Power of Now. When I hear that title, I think of two things, because I think a lot of us are caught in the past that can lead to depression. A lot of us are also worried about the future that leads to anxiety. And there really is a lot of power into just staying present.
Yes.
Staying in the now.
And so here's the curveball to that, is the difficulty of explaining what being present is. He has done it. That's the difference. Is like, I've read the Deepak Chopra's, I've done all the Oprah. It's funny enough that she cites this, but so the thing is like, to try to go to say, hey Stu, hey Jeff, how is it that I mentally prepare myself for buds? We go, okay, how do I explain stress inoculation and the need to just do the little things, make your bed every day? Like, how is that valuable? How can I express the value in doing the little things to make you, air quotes, mentally tough? And then we say, hey, like, calm down, relax, be present, be mindful, be these things. You go, well, that's cool.
What's that mean?
How? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And he's the first person, other than some of the other meditation people that I am growing to appreciate, Jack Kornfield, Ram Dass, who's recently passed, to hear these people that had deep emotional list in the blank. How is it that these amazing human beings were able to not only get through it, but then so eloquently articulate like the verbiage? Because there's our language, the English language, falls short on trying to describe consciousness and presence. It's very difficult for me even try to, because it's just, I'm not good at it.
It's a good point.
But when someone speaks to it eloquently, you're like, oh my goodness, wow. And that's what, Dave Grossman did to me as a soldier. And this as someone who's transitioned and who needs to find much more empathy to become a better person and coach and teacher and father and husband and boyfriend. It's to me, that's to me, evolution, human evolution to me is consciousness. It's not acquiring goods. It's not being a better this. It's being aware that we have such a great opportunity to do good. And that's what the book has meant to me so far. And like I said, I'm only halfway through it, and it's made all these other books make that much more sense too.
One last thing, and it's not a book, but it is a journal. Okay. And it's called The Warrior Path. I don't know if you've heard of these folks. It is called the Boulder Crest Foundation, Boulder Crest Retreat Foundation. It's out of Bluemont, Virginia. Went over there a while back. I actually wrote an article about these guys that are there for veterans, and they're all about post-traumatic growth, right? So it's not, post-traumatic growth. And one of the sayings in here is like right on the very thing is because struggle is a terrible thing to waste. And they really go through and basically it's nothing too much. Like day one says, as in war, you have been good soldiers. So in peace, you will make good citizens. This was General Sherman's quote, but now what do you think about it? It just tells you to write about it. So it's just journaling. It teaches you how to journal, but it's all geared towards post-traumatic growth. So like I said,
it's the same Jordan Peterson, his self-authoring, that's a very similar, and you start seeing, like, I think that's what I mean by consciousness is growth. And that's what we're seeing. The common thread in real therapy is these warrior class individuals with experience, you and I and other great people going, hey, like, let the federal government, the VA, it's beyond their responsibility. So we've got to take care of ourselves. And, the unifying factor, unfortunately, is struggle, suffering, and trauma.
Yeah.
And it's a worthy path. It really is. It's like, we wouldn't have this emotional growth without the struggle. We wouldn't have had this emotional growth and this desire to help each other and teach like we do had we not experienced it ourselves and gotten through it. And I think that's a really important thing. That's the best thing I think we can offer our population is a real understanding of like, hey, I understand what you're going through. So I'm going to, that's why I'm, tough love or whatever it is, but we understand, and that's important.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that was 10 good ones. I like those.
There we go.
10. Your books were, phenomenal for.
I have 2 books I'm going to buy that are going to sit right next to the library in the toilet.
Oh yeah.
Now too. Totally. Absolutely. It's happening.
They're fun. They're fun reads,
And not everything, again, I got pretty serious on this, but and that's the thing too, is reading should be enjoyable. It should elicit those good emotions. And that's why are we gathering information?
Yeah. I'm going to show you another one that had me cracking up. And this is, Jesse Itzler's Living with a SEAL. Now this is Goggins, sitting here yelling at him. Evidently, Jesse paid Goggins a
ton of money
to go live with him for a month and just kick his ass every day. And
and then wrote about it.
Pretty funny. Yeah, funny book. Jesse's a comedian type. I think he married the woman that invented Spanx. So he's just like living large.
Whatever. There you go. No pun intended.
But no, that is funny. It's a good one. No, it's a funny book. So not all books have to be super serious and educational. And
because I literally like some books that if we're going to go down the non-serious, we could do that. Like maybe we do the top 5 fun runs. Like, so like mine would be like The Death of Superman, the graphic novel, or the Dark Knight graphic novel. Like I have a ton of books I've read, and believe me, I spend plenty of time reading fictional books because why? I think that creativity is one of the best outlets for trauma.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is why there's equine therapy, drawing therapy, Like creativity was the thing that I realized that I had lost. I was a very creative child, huge imagination, and then I just kind of lost it.
Yeah.
And now getting back to these things and not taking myself so seriously is very important, which is why I'm wearing a cat shirt deadlifting. Like it's life is sometimes way too awesome to be stuck in a rut, you know,
Yeah.
and it's just, you realize it's you. And, you know, Catherine has been a huge, huge, huge part of that for me.
Nice.
And it's good for me. So
awesome. Well, that's great. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed our top 10 books that we just like. And then prior to that, we just did the other podcast, was our top 10 training books that you really should read, especially if you're, you know, really training on a high level, or you're going to be coaching, you know, on a higher level. I think those 10 were very valuable for that as well. So.
Oh yeah, and just last caveat again. You mentioned Bill McRaven's book. You read it as a young lieutenant.
Yeah.
Both of Colonel Grossman's books for West Point, the Academy, the Citadel.
Oh yeah.
And they're all necessary reading, I believe, at some point within the curriculum of all, and the Air Force Academy.
Yep.
So for those of you that have aspirations to get into those academies or want to lead men in the combat, or if you're a police officer, it should be something I think you should be recommending to everyone that's going to be in uniform serving.
Yeah, absolutely. Understanding.
Or if you're, you know, if you have children, if you have having a you know, son or daughter, niece, nephew, it really gives you a good understanding.
Yeah, I would agree.
That's all I got.
And it's cool to be, you know, realize that you're a sheepdog.
Yes.
You know, and that you're not crazy.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
All right.
All right, Stu, I appreciate it.
All right, Jeff, that great idea today. Thank you very much for your time. And everybody, if you're looking for what we just talked about, I'll put all the links to the, or at least the titles to the books below in the description. So thanks a lot.
Awesome.